Hello there. Welcome back to English Pod Squad. I'm your host, and if you're new here, welcome to the squad. This is the place where we learn a real, everyday English by actually using it. No boring grammar lectures, no endless lists of rules, just stories, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. Today's episode is something I've been excited about for a while. We're going to do a story, a real, full story. And as we go, we'll pick up some great English vocabulary, phrases, and expressions that you can use in your own life. The story is called The Last Train to Somewhere, and it's about this guy named Marco who has this unexpected, life-changing night. All right, let's get into it. Nice and easy. I'll speak slowly and clearly, so just relax, listen, and enjoy. But before the story starts, let's do a quick vocabulary preview. I'll give you 5 words and phrases we'll hear in the story. Ready? Here we go. Exhausted means very, very tired, more than just tired. Hesitate means to pause before doing something because you're unsure. Strike up a conversation means to start talking to someone you don't know. Coincidence is when two things happen at the same time by chance, not on purpose. And leap of faith is to do something risky because you believe it will work out. Keep those words in mind as we go through the story. You'll hear them used naturally, and by the end, I promise they'll feel like old friends. All right, settle in. Here is The Last Train to Somewhere.
It was a Friday night and Marco was exhausted. He had worked 12 hours straight, back-to-back meetings, a presentation that almost went wrong, and lunch that he never actually got to eat. By the time he left the office, it was already 10:45 p.m. The streets were quiet, and all Marco wanted was to get home, take off his shoes, and sleep for about 100 years. He walked down to the subway station and stood at the platform. The last train was supposed to arrive in 4 minutes. He stared at the screen. 4 minutes. He could do 4 minutes. But then, something strange happened. A woman sat down on the bench beside him. She had a big yellow backpack, muddy boots, and was reading a very old, very worn-out book. Marco didn't mean to look, but he couldn't help it. The title on the cover was in a language he didn't recognize. He hesitated. He was tired. He told himself, "Don't say anything, Marco. Just wait for the train." But then she looked up and smiled. Not a polite, "I see you looking" smile. A real smile. Like she had been waiting for someone to notice the book. "Interesting cover," Marco heard himself say. "It's Portuguese," she said. "Old Portuguese. My grandmother gave it to me." "Can you read it?" "Some of it," she laughed. "Enough to get the good parts." And just like that, Marco had struck up a conversation with a complete stranger on a late-night subway platform. Her name was Lena. She was a photographer, the kind who traveled to strange, beautiful places and took pictures of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "So what brings you to the platform at this hour?" she asked. "Surviving," Marco said. Lena laughed again. "Me too." The train arrived, they both stepped on. They found seats across from each other, and somehow, even though Marco had planned to sleep the entire ride, they kept talking. About work, about favorite foods, about places they wanted to visit, about a really good noodle shop 2 blocks from Marco's apartment that he had somehow never tried. "You walk past it every day and you've never gone in?" Lena said, like this was a personal crime. "I'm always in a hurry," Marco said. "That's the saddest thing I've heard all week." Marco smiled. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had smiled like that on a Friday night. When the train reached Marco's stop, he stood up. And then he did something that surprised even himself. "Do you want to get noodles?" he asked. "Right now. I know it's almost midnight, but I think I've been walking past that place for too long." Lena looked at him for a moment. Then she closed her old Portuguese book. That's a big leap of faith for someone who looks like they haven't eaten since Tuesday. Is that a yes? That's a yes. They got off the train together. The noodle shop was still open, just barely. The cook looked at them like they were both a little crazy, then handed them two menus without a word. The noodles were incredible. The conversation was even better. And by the time they finally said goodnight on the sidewalk outside, Marco had exchanged numbers with Lena, promised to visit a photography exhibition she was showing next month, and, for the first time in a long time, felt genuinely happy about a Friday night. Later, lying in bed, he thought about something. What if he had just looked at his phone at the platform? What if he had never noticed the book? What if he hadn't hesitated and then spoken anyway? Some people would call it a coincidence of being in the right place at the right time. But Marco wasn't sure about that. He thought maybe it was less about coincidence and more about being willing to look up. He fell asleep with his shoes still on. End of story.
All right, beautiful. Let's go back and talk about those vocabulary words we previewed before the story. Exhausted. Marco was exhausted after a 12-hour workday. You can use this instead of just saying very tired. Hesitated. He hesitated before speaking to Lena. He paused. He wasn't sure if he should do it. We do this all the time in life. Struck up a conversation. He struck up a conversation with a complete stranger. This means he started talking to someone he didn't know. It has a slightly brave feeling to it, like it took a little courage. Coincidence. Marco wondered if meeting Lena was a coincidence. Two things happening at the same time. By chance. Like running into your friend in another city. Leap of faith. Going to get noodles at midnight with a stranger. That was a leap of faith. Doing something risky because you believe it could be good. A beautiful phrase. Did you catch all 5 of them in the story? If you want to go back and listen again, do it. That's actually one of the best ways to learn. Listen once for the story, then listen again for the language. And that, my friends, is today's episode of English Pod Squad. I really hope you enjoyed that story and picked up some great English along the way. Marco and Lena remind us of something important. Sometimes the best things happen when we put the phone down, look up, and just take that little leap of faith. Now, here's your challenge for this week. Use at least one of today's vocabulary words in a real sentence this week. Say it out loud, write it down, send it to a friend, post it in the comments. Just use it, because that's how language becomes yours. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. It helps more people find the show. And share this with one friend who's learning English, just one. That's all it takes. New episodes drop every week. More stories, more conversations, more real English for real life. So hit that follow button, and I'll see you in the next one.